The night was unusually quiet in the Nevada desert when it happened. A bright flash lit up the sky, followed by a low rumbling sound that made the desert creatures scatter. Something massive was falling from the heavens, leaving a trail of blue-white fire in its wake. Inside the falling ship, four tall figures struggled with their control panels. Their vessel, the Pride of the Stars, was one of the most advanced merchant ships in the galaxy. But now, its quantum drive was failing, and nothing in their extensive database offered a solution. Engine temperature critical, the ship's computer announced in its calm voice. Automatic repair systems offline. Manual intervention required. The tallest of the aliens, Captain Gray, felt a wave of dread wash over him. Their species had evolved past the need for mechanical knowledge centuries ago, relying instead on automated systems and biological enhancements. Now that decision was coming back to haunt them. "Redirect all remaining power to landing thrusters," he ordered, his silver skin reflecting the red warning lights. The ship's computer complied, and their descent slowed slightly, but they were still falling too fast. 20 miles away, Tom Miller was driving his old pickup truck home from a late-night repair job. At 45 years old, he had spent most of his life fixing things that others claimed couldn't be fixed. His truck's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the empty desert road ahead. He noticed the strange light in the sky first. "That ain't no shooting star," he muttered, slowing his truck. The light grew bigger, and Tom could now make out the shape of something massive descending toward the desert floor. His first thought wasn't of aliens or danger. It was about whatever engine could power something that big. The Pride of the Stars hit the ground with a thunderous impact, skidding across the desert floor for nearly half a mile before coming to rest. Sand and rocks sprayed in all directions, creating a deep trench behind the ship. Remarkably, the vessel remained largely intact, a testament to its advanced construction. Inside, the alien crew checked their systems. They were alive, but the ship was dead. The quantum drive had completely shut down, and even their basic maneuvering systems were offline. They were stranded on a primitive world, with no way to call for help. Tom parked his truck at a safe distance and grabbed his trusty toolbox from the passenger seat. He had been fixing machines since he was 10 years old, learning from his father in their family garage. Something about broken machines called to him. They were puzzles waiting to be solved. As he approached the crash site, his trained eye noted several things. The vessel was unlike anything he'd ever seen, but he could tell it was a ship of some kind. The hull design spoke of atmospheric entry capabilities, and the scorch marks around what looked like engine ports told him something had gone very wrong with the power system. The desert night was cool, and Tom's boots crunched on the sandy soil as he walked closer. His flashlight beam revealed more details, intricate patterns on the hull that might be heat dissipation systems, and what appeared to be access panels similar to those on aircraft he'd worked on. Inside the ship, the aliens watched the approaching human with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Their scanners showed the primitive being carried only basic tools, but there was something about its purposeful approach that caught their attention. "It appears to be examining our engine systems," one of the crew members noted with surprise. Captain Gray watched as the human moved around their ship with obvious interest. Despite their advanced technology and biological superiority, they were helpless. Their ship was broken, and their species had long ago lost the ability to understand the mechanical principles that kept their vessels flying. What they didn't know was that they had just encountered something unique in the galaxy, a human mechanic. And Tom Miller had never met a machine he couldn't fix, even if it came from the stars. Tom Miller circled the crashed ship one more time, his flashlight beam revealing more interesting details with each pass. He'd been working on machines for 35 years, and something about this vessel made his fingers itch to open up those access panels and look inside. The ship was huge, about the size of a commercial airplane, but its design was like nothing he'd ever seen. Steam hissed from what looked like cooling vents, and a faint blue glow pulsed from deep within the engine section. Tom recognized the signs of an overheated power system. He'd seen it countless times in broken-down trucks and farm equipment. just never on this scale. Inside the ship, Captain Gray watched the human with growing interest. "It keeps examining our engine configuration," he said to his crew. Perhaps it knows something about mechanical systems." The youngest crew member, Blue, looked doubtful. "But it's a primitive being. Its species hasn't even achieved regular spaceflight. We don't have many options," Captain Gray replied. He made his decision. "Activate the universal translator. We're going to make contact." Tom was kneeling by what appeared to be a maintenance hatch when he heard a soft whirring sound. A panel on the ship's side slid open, releasing a gentle mist. He stood up slowly, keeping his flashlight steady, as 4 tall figures emerged from the opening. They were at least 7 feet tall, with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer in his flashlight beam. Their eyes were large and dark, and they moved with an odd grace that made them appear almost weightless. The tallest one held up empty hands in what Tom recognized as a universal gesture of peace. "We mean no harm," a voice said, seemingly coming from a small device on the alien's chest. "Our ship is damaged. We require assistance." Tom looked at his toolbox, then back at the aliens. A small smile crossed his face. "Well," he said, "you're in luck. Fixing things is what I do." The aliens exchanged glances, clearly surprised by his calm reaction. The tallest one, Captain Gray, stepped forward. "You are not afraid." Tom shrugged. "Scared stopped being useful about 30 years ago, when I had to fix my first combine harvester in the middle of nowhere." He pointed his flashlight at the engine section. "That hissing sound your ship's making, that's a coolant problem if I ever heard one. Mind if I take a look?" The aliens led Tom to their engine room, which was a marvel of technology. Holographic displays showed system status in strange symbols, and the quantum drive core pulsed with that eerie blue light. But underneath all that advanced tech, Tom could see the basics. Pipes that needed to carry something from point A to point B, systems that needed cooling, and parts that needed to work together. "Your quantum containment field is failing," Blue explained, pointing to a complex diagram. "The automated repair systems are non-functional, and we lack the mechanical knowledge to." Tom had already opened his toolbox. "Hold this light for me, would you?" he said, handing his flashlight to the surprised alien. He pulled out a wrench and walked over to a panel near the core. "See these connections here? They're vibrating out of sync. On Earth, we call that harmonics failure. Doesn't matter if it's a tractor engine or a whatever this is. Bad vibrations mean something's loose." The aliens watched in amazement as Tom worked. He moved with confidence, seeming to understand their complex machinery on an intuitive level. When he tightened a series of connections, the hissing sound decreased noticeably. "That's just a temporary fix," Tom said, wiping his hands on a rag. "But it'll keep your core stable for now." He looked at the bewildered aliens and smiled. "I've got a friend with a bigger workshop in town. Between the two of us, we might be able to get you flying again." Captain Gray stared at the simple wrench in Tom's hand, then at the partially stabilized quantum drive. Their most advanced technology, and this human had begun fixing it with basic tools and pure mechanical intuition. Perhaps being stranded on Earth wasn't such bad luck after all. The sun was rising over the Nevada desert as Tom's old pickup truck bounced along the dirt road. In the passenger seat, Captain Gray watched the human landscape pass by with fascination. The other 3 crew members had stayed with their ship, running basic diagnostics as Tom had suggested. "Your world is quite different from ours," Captain Gray said through his translator. "We transformed our planets into vast cities centuries ago." Tom nodded, steering around a pothole. "Out here, we learn to work with what we've got." Speaking of which, he pulled up to a large building with a faded sign that read Mike's Mechanical Marvels. "This is our best shot at fixing your ship." Mike Barnes was 70 years old and had been fixing machines since before humans landed on the moon. He was working on an old Chevy engine when Tom walked in with the 7-foot-tall silver alien. Mike looked up, blinked twice, and wiped his hands on a shop rag. "Well," he said calmly, "this explains why you called at 5 in the morning." After brief introductions, they gathered around Mike's workbench where Captain Gray displayed a holographic image of their quantum drive. The complex engine spun slowly in the air, its internal workings exposed in intricate detail. "Our species focused on biological advancement," Captain Gray explained. "We enhanced our minds and bodies, but in doing so, we lost our connection to mechanical principles. Our ships are built by automated factories and maintained by AI systems." Mike studied the hologram, his weathered face thoughtful. "Looks like you folks took the scenic route to the stars. We're still using nuts and bolts, but at least we know how they work." Tom pointed to a section of the drive. "That part there reminds me of a turbine engine. See how the energy flow spirals through those chambers? It's like a jet engine, just working with quantum particles instead of air." Mike nodded slowly. "And these cooling channels here, they're not so different from a car's radiator system. Fancy tech or not, heat still needs somewhere to go." Captain Gray watched in amazement as the two humans discussed his ship's advanced technology in terms of their simple machines. Their minds seemed to grasp mechanical concepts instinctively, seeing patterns that his own species had forgotten how to recognize. "The main problem," Tom explained, "is that we'll need to adapt Earth materials to work with alien tech. Some of these components are just too advanced to replicate." Mike walked over to a cluttered shelf and pulled out an old manual. "Reminds me of when we had to fix that experimental military helicopter back in '82. Couldn't get the original parts, so we had to get creative." "The quantum core is extremely delicate," Captain Gray warned. "If it destabilizes completely, the results would be unfortunate." "Everything's delicate if you don't know what you're doing," Mike replied with a smile. "But between my experience and Tom's knack for impossible fixes, we'll figure something out. First thing we need is a proper workspace." They spent the next hour clearing space in Mike's workshop. Old engines were moved, tools were organized, and a large area was prepared for the alien ship parts they would need to repair. "Our homeworld is 3 months away at maximum speed," Captain Gray said quietly. "And that's assuming we could contact them, which we cannot do with our communications array damaged." Tom looked at the worried alien captain, then at Mike. Both humans shared a determined nod. They'd built their lives on fixing things that others couldn't, on finding solutions where none seemed to exist. This was just another problem to solve, even if it came from the stars. "Well," Mike said, picking up his toolbox, "we better get started then. Tom, call your cousin at the scrapyard. We're gonna need some specialized materials." He turned to Captain Gray. "And you, Captain, are about to learn why Earth mechanics have a reputation for working miracles." In the rising morning light, the unlikely team headed back to the crashed ship. They had a quantum drive to fix, and they were going to fix it the human way, with ingenuity, determination, and good old-fashioned mechanical know-how. Over the next few days, Mike's workshop transformed into something that looked like a cross between an auto repair shop and an alien research facility. The crashed ship had been carefully towed in during the night, covered by tarps to avoid unwanted attention. Local folks who drove by pretended not to notice. Small towns were good at keeping secrets when they needed to. Blue, the youngest alien crew member, watched in fascination as Tom and Mike worked on a particularly complex part of the quantum drive. They were using what the aliens considered primitive tools: wrenches, welding equipment, and diagnostic devices that seemed impossibly simple compared to their advanced technology. "I don't understand," Blue said, his translator converting his confusion into words. "How can you repair quantum technology with such basic tools?" Tom looked up from where he was carefully measuring a replacement part. "Sometimes the simplest tools are the best tools. You just need to understand the principles behind how things work." Mike was at his workbench, adapting Earth materials to work with alien technology. He discovered that certain rare Earth metals, when properly treated, could handle the quantum energy flow almost as well as the original alien materials. "It's like cooking," Mike explained, carefully shaping a piece of metal. You might not have the exact ingredients the recipe calls for, but if you understand how flavors work together, you can make something just as good with what you have. The other two crew members, who they'd started calling Red and Green for their colored environment suits, were learning to use human tools. They found it strange at first, having to physically touch and manipulate machinery instead of letting automated systems handle everything. Your species has such a direct connection to machines, Red observed, carefully turning a wrench as Tom had shown him. We lost that connection generations ago. Everything became automated, digitized, handled by AI. That's your problem right there, Mike said, walking over with his newly fabricated part. You can't always trust computers to understand what a machine needs. Sometimes you need to feel it, listen to it, understand it with your hands and ears. As they worked, more local people got involved. Old Bill from the scrapyard provided rare materials they needed. Jenny from the diner brought food and coffee, pretending not to notice that some of her customers were 7 feet tall and silver-skinned. The local sheriff drove by regularly, making sure no unwanted visitors disturbed what he officially called Mike's special project. The aliens were amazed by how quickly humans adapted to their technology. Tom and Mike might not understand the quantum physics behind the drive, but they grasped its mechanical principles intuitively. They saw patterns and connections that the aliens' automated systems had never considered. "Look here," Tom said one afternoon, pointing to a holographic diagram. "Your quantum flow is like water in a pipe. Doesn't matter if it's quantum particles or water molecules. They both need a clear path to flow through. These blockages here, they're just fancy space versions of what we deal with in clogged engines." Captain Gray watched as the humans worked, noting how they combined theory and practice in ways his species had forgotten. They didn't just fix problems. They understood them, felt them, solved them with a mix of knowledge and intuition that no eye could match. "We've been relying too much on automated systems," he admitted to Mike. "We've forgotten the value of hands-on experience." Mike nodded, wiping grease from his hands. "Nothing wrong with advanced technology," he said. "But at the end of the day, every machine needs someone who understands its heart, not just its brain." As the sun set outside the workshop, the team continued their work. The quantum drive was slowly coming back to life, thanks to an unlikely combination of alien technology and human ingenuity. But none of them knew that their biggest challenge was still to come, one that would test the limits of both human skill and alien trust. It was late at night in Mike's workshop when Tom had his sudden realization. He'd been staring at the quantum drive's holographic diagram for hours, something nagging at the back of his mind. The alien engine hummed softly in the background, its blue light casting strange shadows on the walls. "Mike," he called out, excitement in his voice. "Come look at this. Does this pattern remind you of anything?" Mike walked over, wiping his hands on his ever-present shop rag. He squinted at the complex energy flow patterns Tom was pointing to in the hologram. His eyes widened as he saw what Tom had noticed. "Well, I'll be damned," Mike muttered. "It's just like a '67 Mustang's combustion chamber, just quantum." Captain Gray and his crew gathered around, curious about the humans' excitement. "What do you mean?" Blue asked, his translator struggling to keep up with their rapid exchange. Tom grabbed a piece of chalk and started drawing on the workshop's blackboard. "Look here, in an old muscle car engine, fuel and air mix in a combustion chamber, creating controlled explosions that drive the pistons. Your quantum drive does basically the same thing, just with quantum particles instead of gasoline." The aliens watched in amazement as Tom drew parallel diagrams, one of a classic car engine, one of their quantum drive. When simplified to basic principles, the similarities were striking. "The problem isn't in your fancy quantum mechanics," Mike said, pointing to a specific section of the drive. "It's in the basic flow pattern. You've got the equivalent of vapor lock in your quantum fuel lines." Red tilted his head in confusion. "Vapor lock? It's what happens in a car when liquid fuel turns to gas before it should," Tom explained. "Your quantum particles are doing the same thing, changing state at the wrong point in the cycle. That's why your automated systems couldn't fix it. They were looking for a quantum solution to what's really just a basic flow problem. Captain Gray studied the diagrams carefully. But how can we solve this? Our materials are failing, and Earth technology isn't advanced enough to handle quantum energy. Mike walked over to his storage room and came back with a box of old parts. Maybe we don't need advanced materials. Sometimes the old ways work best. He held up what looked like a simple valve. This is from a 1940s airplane engine. They built things to last back then. Over the next few hours, they worked to adapt the old valve design to work with the quantum drive. Tom's understanding of flow dynamics and Mike's experience with vintage engines proved invaluable. They used earth metals treated with the aliens' remaining quantum-resistant coating, creating a hybrid technology that nobody had ever tried before. "It's not pretty," Tom said as they installed the modified valve. "But it should work. The principle is the same. Whether you're handling gasoline or quantum particles, you need smooth flow and proper timing." The aliens had never considered such a simple solution. Their species had advanced so far into complex technology that they'd forgotten how basic mechanical principles still applied, even to quantum physics. Blue helped Tom make the final adjustments, his long fingers surprisingly adept with the human tools now. "I think I understand," he said. "We've been overthinking our problems, looking for complex solutions when simple ones would work better." They stepped back as Mike powered up the drive for a test. The familiar blue glow appeared, but this time it was steady, without the unstable flickering they'd seen before. The energy flow readings on the holographic display showed a smooth, consistent pattern. "It's working," Captain Gray said in disbelief. "The quantum flow is stabilizing." "How did you know this would work?" Tom smiled, patting the engine housing gently. "Sometimes you don't need a supercomputer to solve a problem. Sometimes you just need to remember that every machine, no matter how advanced, follows the same basic rules. The universe might be quantum, but mechanics is still mechanics." The workshop filled with the happy sounds of success, but their celebration would be short-lived. None of them noticed the small radiation warning light that had started blinking on one of the alien control panels. The warning came without warning. One moment they were celebrating their success with the quantum drive, and the next, Blue's handheld scanner started screaming with alarm. "Radiation leak," Blue shouted, his translator's voice higher than usual with panic. "The core's containment field is failing." Tom and Mike rushed to the holographic displays, which were now flashing angry red symbols. The quantum drive's blue glow had taken on a dangerous purple tint, and waves of heat were radiating from the engine section. "What's happening?" Tom asked, already reaching for his tools. Captain Gray's silver skin had paled to an almost white shade. "The new valve is working too well. The quantum flow is stronger than before, but the containment field wasn't ready for the increased power. If it fails completely..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the workshop understood that a quantum core breach would be catastrophic. "How long do we have?" Mike asked, his voice steady despite the crisis. Red checked the readings. 10 minutes before total containment failure. "The automated systems are completely overwhelmed." Tom looked at the engine, then at his toolbox, making a quick decision. "We need to shut it down manually. Right now." "Impossible," Green protested. "The radiation levels are already too high. No one can get close enough to reach the manual override controls." But Tom was already moving, grabbing his old welding jacket and helmet. "Those controls are just mechanical switches, right? No different from shutting down a nuclear reactor, except for the fancy quantum parts." Mike grabbed his arm. "Tom, the radiation is just another kind of heat," Tom finished. "And we dealt with heat before." He looked at Captain Gray. "Talk me through the shutdown sequence. I'll need to know exactly which controls to hit." The aliens quickly explained the procedure while Tom put on every piece of protective gear he could find. It wasn't proper radiation protection, but it was better than nothing. Mike's workshop first aid kit had some radiation badges from his old days working on military vehicles. They would at least tell them how bad the exposure was. 4 minutes until containment failure, Blue announced, his voice shaking. Tom took a deep breath and approached the engine. The heat was intense, even through his protective gear. The quantum drive's housing had become a maze of purple lightning, crackling with unstable energy. "The first switch is on your left," Captain Gray's voice came through a radio they'd rigged to his helmet. "It needs to be turned counterclockwise and held for 3 seconds. Tom reached through the energy field, feeling the heat even through his heavy gloves. He found the switch and turned it. 1 down, 3 to go. 3 minutes, Blue called out. The second switch was higher up. Tom could feel the radiation badges on his chest changing color, not a good sign. His hands were steady as he flipped the next control. 2 minutes. The third switch was the hardest, hidden behind a panel that was now glowing with heat. Tom had to remove his right glove to reach it, feeling the burning pain as he did so. 1 minute until total containment failure. Only one switch remained, but it was deep inside the housing. Tom could hear Mike and the aliens shouting at him to get out, to save himself. Instead, he reached in with his unprotected hand. The pain was immediate and intense, but he found the switch. With the last of his strength, Tom pulled it down. The purple lightning stopped. The heat began to fade. The quantum drive's glow dimmed to a safe, cool blue before fading entirely. Tom stumbled backward, his right hand badly burned, radiation badges now a dark color that nobody wanted to think about. Mike caught him before he could fall. "Get him to the hospital," Captain Gray ordered. "Our medical kit has some radiation treatment supplies. Take them." As Mike's old truck roared off toward the county hospital, Tom managed a weak smile. "Did it work?" he asked. "Yeah, buddy," Mike answered, breaking every speed limit. "You did it. You shut it down the human way, with guts, grease, and a whole lot of crazy." Behind them, in the workshop, the aliens stared at the dead quantum drive, then at the empty doorway where Tom had been carried out. They had just witnessed something their species had forgotten was possible: the willing sacrifice of safety for the sake of others, the triumph of human spirit over advanced technology. 3 weeks after the radiation crisis, Mike's workshop was busier than ever. Tom sat at his usual spot by the workbench, his right hand wrapped in special alien healing bandages. The radiation exposure had been serious, but between Earth's medical care and the aliens' advanced healing technology, he was recovering well. The quantum drive hummed quietly in the background, fully repaired and safer than ever. After the crisis, they'd rebuilt it with a combination of alien technology and human safety measures, including several manual shutdown switches that even the aliens now understood how to use. "Your ship is ready to fly," Mike said to Captain Gray, closing the final access panel. "We added some old-school backup systems. Sometimes the simple solutions work better than the fancy ones." Captain Gray nodded, his silver skin reflecting the afternoon sunlight that streamed through the workshop windows. "We've learned more than just repairs during our stay here," he said. "We've learned about the value of hands-on knowledge, of understanding the machines we depend on." Blue, who had spent the most time learning from Tom and Mike, was showing Red and Green how to use basic tools. The aliens had decided that depending entirely on automated systems was no longer acceptable. They needed to relearn the mechanical skills their species had forgotten. "We've contacted our homeworld," Captain Gray continued. "They were surprised by our report. The idea that primitive tools and basic mechanical knowledge could save an advanced quantum drive was difficult for them to accept." Tom laughed, flexing his healing hand. "Bet they were even more surprised to hear you want to set up an emergency repair station here." It had been Captain Gray's idea. Earth's location and its inhabitants' unique mechanical abilities made it perfect for a repair stop. The local town council had quietly agreed, seeing the economic possibilities. Mike's workshop would become the first human-alien repair facility in history. "The first ships will arrive within the month," Captain Gray confirmed. We're sending our most experienced crews to learn what you call the basics of mechanical repair. Mike walked over to a new addition to his workshop, a wall of photographs showing the repair process they used on the quantum drive. Already got my first alien apprentice, he said, nodding at Blue. Kid's got good hands for the work, once he stopped overthinking everything. Blue had decided to stay on Earth for a while, learning everything he could about human mechanical techniques. He would be the bridge between human knowledge and alien technology. I still don't understand how you knew what to do during the crisis, Blue said to Tom. All our advanced systems failed, but you just fixed it. Tom stood up, walking over to an old car engine he was teaching Blue to repair. That's because you folks forgot something important, he said. Machines aren't just equations and energy fields. They're like living things. You need to understand their heart, not just their brain. Outside, the sound of trucks arriving filled the air. Word had spread through the alien trading networks about Earth's mechanical wizards, and ships were already lining up for repairs. The town had adapted surprisingly well. The diner now served both human truckers and alien traders, while the local motel had modified some rooms for their taller, silver-skinned guests. Captain Gray's crew was preparing for departure, their ship better than new. But they knew they'd be back. Earth had become more than just an emergency landing site. It was now a place where advanced technology and basic mechanical wisdom could meet and learn from each other. You know, Mike said, watching as humans and aliens worked together in his workshop, my grandpa used to say that the simple things in life are often the most important. Guess that applies to fixing spaceships too. Tom nodded, picking up a wrench with his healing hand. In the corner, Blue was teaching another alien crew about the basics of mechanical repair, while Jenny from the diner brought in coffee and what the aliens now called repair fuel, her famous apple pie. The universe was vast and full of advanced technology, but sometimes all it needed was a good mechanic with a trusty wrench and the wisdom to see past the complexity to the simple heart of any problem. Earth's mechanics were ready to teach that lesson to the stars.